بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It's a pleasure to discuss with you today issues of epistemology and issues of thought from the Islamic perspective. Let me start by defining the two main terms that we are going to use in this discussion. Epistemology is a branch of philosophy that deals with the theory of knowledge. What is knowledge? How is it acquired? What's the nature of knowledge? And how is knowledge disseminated? All aspects that deal with knowledge are covered under epistemology. Sometimes epistemology is called the science of science or the science of knowledge. In Arabic, this is termed as ilm al-ilm. As Muslims, we have got our own epistemology. We've got our own theory of knowledge, which is different from the epistemology of other communities and other societies. Our epistemology basically is based on the assumption that there are three sources of knowledge. These three sources of knowledge are again divided into two types. Two of them are primary sources of knowledge. They on their own are a source of knowledge. The third one is a secondary source of knowledge. The first source of knowledge is wahy, revelation. And this is from Quran and from Sunnah. We differ from other worldly views, other civilizations, other communities in the acceptance of revelation as a source of knowledge. From the secular perspective, knowledge is not derivable from revelation or anything supernatural above the human. But in Islam, revelation, Quran and Sunnah are basic sources of human knowledge. The second source of knowledge is the empirical knowledge, the knowledge we get by observation, by experimentation. And this is knowledge that is around all of us in the environment, ilm al-kawn. So as Muslims, we can use ilm al-wahy, the knowledge from revelation, or we can use ilm al-kawn, the knowledge from the environment or the empirical knowledge. Both are sources of knowledge. Now the third source of knowledge is al-aql, the human mind, the human intellect. The human intellect can create new knowledge by either looking at the primary source of knowledge in the revelation wahy, or by looking at the environment. Through rational reasoning, the human mind can reach knowledge. So as I said at the beginning, it is three sources of knowledge. Two of them are primary, and the third one, which is al-aql, the mind or the human intellect, is secondary because it depends on the other two. The second theme of our discussion is that of thought, al-fikr, Islamic thought, al-fikr al-Islami. Now the word thought has got two meanings. The first meaning is the process of thinking. The second meaning is the content, what comes out of the thinking. As Muslims, we are more concerned with the process of thinking because we need to think about the revelation, we need to think about our empirical knowledge and empirical observations. In terms of the content or what we reach after thinking, most of it is in the aqidah, our system of beliefs. So our thought is derived directly from the aqidah, and there is very little that we can add on except to understand, to expose, to explain, and to see how we can put the aqidah into our daily life. Now let us now talk about the problems we have about these two things, epistemology and thought. In epistemology, we have a big problem. And this is that because of epistemological failures, we end up with a knowledge crisis. The Ummah has got a knowledge crisis. The knowledge crisis is manifested in the duality of the education system, duality of knowledge. We have got education systems that use the traditional Islamic education system, like the madrasa, Dar al-Ulum. And we have got the modern education system that is based on ideas and educational content and curricula that were imported from the outside. Both of them exist side by side. And this leads to a lot of confusion because the elite of the Ummah, being educated in two systems of knowledge that are not 100% compatible, they end up with confusion in their knowledge. And because the knowledge is confused, they end up confused in their thinking, because thinking is based on knowledge. So this educational crisis, this knowledge crisis, is a major crisis. And it is a manifestation of a problem in the basic epistemological formulation of in the Ummah. The second problem is the thought failure. Thought failure manifests in the failure of our community, our Ummah, our intellectuals to analyze correctly what are the problems, to think creatively of the solutions to the problems of the Ummah, with the result that this intellectual failure has led to so many problems continuing unsolved in the Ummah. So we have got these two problems. The problem of the education crisis calls upon us to undertake epistemological reform. Because when we reform the epistemology, when we go back to the correct understanding of knowledge and its theory from the Islamic perspective, we can then start reforming the knowledge content, we can start reforming the curricula, we can start reforming the educational system. And once the educational system is reformed, then we can reform the whole Ummah, because the Ummah or the society is based on education. If the education system is good, the society will be good. If the education system is not good, the community will not be good and will not be successful. The second task is the task of reforming thought. Now, thought reform requires that we start thinking seriously, analyzing issues seriously in a deep way. We need to look at the revelation, Quran and Sunnah, from a space and time dimension to see how they can solve our contemporary problems. Because most of the problems that we have got today arise from the way we think. When we think in a wrong way, we reach wrong conclusions and we undertake wrong actions and wrong solutions. When we think right, we will be able to undertake correct actions that will lead to the growth and prosperity of the Ummah. Now let me go a little bit in more detail about the knowledge and education crisis. The knowledge and education crisis, as I said before, manifests in the existence of two education systems side by side. Our children sometimes go to two schools. There could be the madrasa the Islamic education system in the morning and in the afternoon to the modern school. Now, these two schools have got different worldviews. They are teaching children different expectations, different understandings of the world, different understandings of the reality, with the result that they end up being confused because these two systems are not completely compatible on many things, and they are contradictory on finer details. So this is the crisis of knowledge. And this crisis carries on even among adults, because the elite of the Ummah were either educated in the traditional system, the traditional ulama, or were educated in the modern system. Now, this elite cannot talk to one another because of the differences in the way they were educated, because of the differences in the way they look at the world. And many problems that we face at the community level, at the international level, arise from this dichotomy, from this duality in the elite of the Ummah. We cannot continue with this dichotomy. We need to undertake an epistemological reform that will result into the integration of knowledge, so that the empirical knowledge that we get by research and from science, as well as the knowledge we get from the revelation, Quran and Sunnah, can be integrated into one whole and not two things. So integration of knowledge is a challenge that we need to undertake to solve the problem of dichotomy. Now, in order for the Ummah, for the community to be reformed, we need a new knowledge strategy. This new knowledge strategy will start with the integration of knowledge, and it will be the basis for renewal, tajdeed, and reform, islah. Because you can never reform a society if you do not have educated people in that society. So when we have education that is integrated, knowledge that is integrated, we shall be able to have citizens who are integrated in their thinking, in their actions, and in their endeavors, so that they can build an integrated community that goes ahead to prosper in a very integrated and well-coordinated way. In order to integrate, or in order to reform the education system, the knowledge system, we need to think about the research methodology, because it is research that produces new knowledge. Knowledge keeps on being changed, being developed, progressing, breaking new barriers. And it is the research that leads to new knowledge, leads to new frontiers of knowledge. Again, as we talk about research, we need to reform the research methodology so that it is objective. It does not have bias. At the moment, we detect a lot of epistemological bias in the research area. Why? Because the research is being affected by the underlying worldview. We need to correct the worldview in order to make sure that our research is objective according to the Quranic doctrine of al-istiqama al-haq, following the truth and not being biased by any other considerations. Now, all these ideas should end up with the reform of disciplines of knowledge. We need to take each discipline of knowledge and look at the basic assumptions, the basic methods of analysis, the basic methods of research, and see how they fit into the worldview, into the integrated worldview. So this may require changes in the textbooks that I used. This may require changes in the curricula that I used, and this may require many changes in the way we look at each discipline of knowledge, so that it is an integrated discipline of knowledge and does not perpetuate the duality or dichotomy in knowledge that I discussed at the beginning. There are several practical steps that we can take towards this process of disciplining knowledge, of integrating knowledge, of reforming disciplines of knowledge. The most important actually will be to think about how we can write textbooks in each discipline of knowledge that reflect the integrated worldview that we are talking about, a worldview that will solve the problem of dichotomy in knowledge. Now I want to move on to talk in more detail about the thought crisis. We are at the moment experiencing a thought failure with many people, many Muslims, misunderstanding basic concepts of knowledge, of Islam. It is because of this misunderstanding that we end up with people becoming extremists, because they go away from the moderate view of Islam. Now, the thought failure is not new. It started a long time ago. The first and second, and to a large extent, the third centuries of Islam were centuries of intellectual ferment. People were thinking, exploring, and discussing, putting things together in what used to be called al-ijtihad. Ijtihad means thinking, analyzing, intellectual effort. But after that, there was intellectual stagnation. When the doors of ijtihad were closed, people stopped thinking. People just followed what we call taqlid. They just followed without questioning. So intellectual productivity fell in the ummah since a long time ago. But fortunately, in each century, there has been a knowledge reformer, a thought reformer who has arisen to try to awaken the discipline of ijtihad or intellectual effort. That is the cornerstone of our civilization. And these reformers can be identified in each century that we have gone through. And the Prophet ﷺ did tell us that ala ra's kullu mi'at sana, every 100 years will come a reformer who will renew, yujaddid, who will renew for this ummah its religion. So reform efforts have been going on, and they have existed or coexisted with intellectual stagnation. And it's because of these reform efforts that intellect has continued to grow. Now, the intellectual failure manifests in two ways. There are some intellectual problems from the past that have not been resolved until today. Fortunately, these are few, and they arose from misunderstanding of the Aqidah. So most people have the correct understanding, but there are still some who have got this misunderstanding. There is the issue of human will and human choice, Qadriya and Jabriya, human action. Are we free to do things, or are we not free to do things? Misunderstandings of these issues have led to practical stagnation, because sometimes people give up making an effort to improve the society because of some of these misunderstandings. But as I said, these issues, most of them have been resolved, but there are residues of issues that have not been resolved. The issue of the relationship between ration, al-aql, and revelation, al-naql, it was resolved by the ulama many centuries ago. But until today, it is still a problem among some of the people. So the conclusion is there are some thought problems from the past that still exist in our community, and we need to resolve these issues if we are to go ahead. The second group of thought problems are contemporary issues that have faced the Ummah and we have not been able to solve them. And these issues continue being debated, and they will be debated more, and we need to find solutions. We have got problems with issues of the family. The woman, what's the role of the woman? What are her rights? What's her position in society? It's being debated among many people. It's very clear in the Quran. But because of the thought failure, we fail to translate the Quranic principles into correct social behaviors. We've got issues of leadership. How do we solve the problem of leadership? Again, people have different views, they quarrel, they dispute with one another and cannot solve this problem. There are new problems that arise from the economic system. What economic model shall we follow? How can we use the wahy in order to develop an economic system that will have morality and justice? That issue is still there. Even there are issues about information, culture, issues about entertainment in society. So all of these are contemporary issues that are waiting for Islamic solutions. Now the solutions exist in the revelation, but the failure is a thought failure. It's a failure of the intellectual analysis, intellectual conceptualization of solutions from the revelation to be brought into reality in society and solve problems so that the community can go ahead. I want to talk about another dimension of the thought crisis. This crisis arises from fiqh. As you know, fiqh is the academic discipline that studies the Sharia or Islamic law. In the past, fiqh developed being based on the nas, on the text of the Quran and the Sunnah, and the ulama developed it to a very high level of perfection. They were able to provide solutions to societal problems very easily and very convincingly, because the society was simple, not as complicated as today. And these solutions were characterized by solving individual problems, what you call fiqh al-juz'iyat. Today, we have got big problems that cannot be resolved by fiqh al-juz'iyat, that cannot be resolved by looking at fiqh from specific chapter-based solutions. The problems we face today require a bird's eye view, an overall view. And I think resolving these problems will require a new approach to fiqh. And this approach is called maqasid al-sharia, or fiqh al-maqasid. This is the fiqh that does not look at the individual parts, but looks at the whole. It is all-embracing. It looks at a problem from various angles in a holistic way. Now, maqasid al-sharia, or the purposes of the law, are not something new. This theory of maqasid al-sharia existed since the first five centuries of Islam. It had many pioneers. Among them was Shaykh al-Haramain al-Juwayni and also Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. All the great thinkers talked about this al-maqasid, although they did not use the exact terms that we use today. The Andalusian scholar Abu Ishaq al-Shatibi wrote a book about this maqasid al-sharia. And this book is a great book because it's very easy to understand, it's very systematic, it's very scientific in its approach, that there are 5 purposes of the Sharia. The law was revealed to fulfill 5 major purposes. And these purposes are حفظ الدين, protection of the deen, حفظ النفس, protection of life, حفظ النسل, protection of progeny, this includes the family, حفظ العقل, protection of the human mind, and حفظ المال, protection of resources. So these 5 purposes are the major guidelines for a society. Whatever we do should fulfill these 5 purposes or not contradict them. So when we start thinking using the maqasid approach, I think we shall be able to solve many of our thought problems and many of our community problems. Thank you very much for listening to me. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.